Hey everybody, I thought I would start doing or adding to my sway some videos about things that I find are very important to share with everybody. And so this week, my first video, I'm sharing all about counting collections. And so this is an article from Teaching Children Mathematics from March 2007. Some of you have probably received this from either myself or Karen Mitten in the past, but maybe our new teachers haven't seen it, so I will share this with you. Very important, all about counting collections. And so what are collections? Can be anything, objects, linking cubes. There's tons of stuff at the dollar store, seashells, gems. Kids love to count anything, and that makes it really fun and exciting. But essentially, it's very important for children to be counting every single day. So our math teachers, that's a good question to ask yourself. Are your children counting every single day? Because that is so important for them. They need to understand and really work on that concrete before they can move on to the abstract. So even for our middle school students, if some of them are really having a hard time, I often hear, our middle school students are really low in math. Well, they probably haven't had enough experience counting. And you may think, by middle school, they don't want to be counting objects anymore. Well, that we shouldn't feel that way, right? It should be something that we're still focusing on at all ages, whether they need it. If they need it, it's so important to continue to incorporate that within your classroom. And so one way to do that is also by allowing the students to notice what they're doing and what others are doing. And so doing things like creating a fishbowl. So if you notice a student has a really cool strategy for counting, you can gather the class around that student and kind of get that student to talk about the strategy that they've come up with. And so that's teaching the students, first of all, it's giving ownership to that student who has that strategy. They're defending it and explaining it, which increases their comprehension. And then other students are noticing, hey, that's a really good strategy. I might try that next time when I'm counting. And so as a teacher, Sandra Stockwell always used to say, be less helpful. So it's really important to always let the students come up with their own strategies rather than give them the strategies that we think they should have. Another really great thing to do is ensure that students are keeping track of their counting somehow, and that they're recording their strategy and writing down their total. That's really important as well. So recording how they have counted. And so I've got some recording sheets for that as well, which you don't have to do the recording sheets every day, but it is another great way to formatively assess your students. And then once students have created their own collections, another great thing to do is add their collections together. So get teams of students working together, adding their collections together. I was working in one class where we had added, 3 or 4 collections all together and had surpassed and made 1,000. And so getting students to visually see what 1,000 looks like really helps them with place value. We know that our students struggle with place value. So that's another really great thing to do within your class. And so I think a good question to ask yourself is, do I even have that many materials in my class? And if you don't, then we have to figure out a way to get them in there, because that's really important for our students. Another really important thing is to be asking questions. Asking questions. So I've got some tracking sheets here in terms of exactly what you should be asking your students. And this is good for teachers as well as our educational assistants who are working with some of our students. The questions are right here for you on this tracking sheet. So if this is something I haven't shared with you, feel free to send me an email. Maybe I'll upload it on our Microsoft team under the numeracy file folder. So some questions are, can you count these for me? Is there another way that you can count? Sometimes our students are always focusing on the same way. So we want them branching out, trying new strategies. Then show me how you counted. How did you keep track of the ones you counted? Why did you line them up that way? Show me another way you can count. That's one-to-one tagging. And if you started counting here, how many would you have? And then cardinality is all about how many do you have? And then conservation, so having a group of objects, getting them to figure out the total, spreading them out, and then asking them how many do you have. So students will tell you, now I have more because they're spread out, they don't have conservation yet. These are the counting principles. If I gave you one more, how many would you have? If I took one away, how many would you have? If I gave you two more, two less, how many groups do you have? That's when we're asking about groups, that's all about unitizing. And that's one area that we find students really struggle with. And it is so important for going on, you know, working on repeated addition and then moving on to multiplication. So how many groups do you have? How many groups of two do you have? How many groups of three would you have? 4, 5. And then after giving a student 2 different sets of collections, maybe they're different size objects, and then you ask them, what can you tell me about these collections? And then finally, does the student react if they get a different count after counting another way? Sometimes students will use a different strategy and come up with a different total. And so that if they're not aware of, oh, you know, now I have a different total, I must have done something wrong. Well, that's something that they have to work on, that accuracy. And then, so asking questions is really important. And then as a classroom teacher or, you know, our educational assistants, you can be walking around the room, jotting down your observations, collecting that formative assessment in terms of where they're at in their counting. And that tells you so much, about your students. Another thing that I wanted to add too is when they're working and adding their collections together, there's a lot of teamwork happening there. And so partners have a lot of negotiating to do as they decide on a collection. They have to choose a place to work and figure out a strategy. So some questions that you might hear, you know, will one person count while the other records? Will both children count all of the tiles into cups of 10s and then count up by 10s together? Will the process work if the partners start counting from opposite sides of the pile? You know, there's really a lot of opportunity for teamwork, collaboration, so they're working on their global competencies while they're counting. So that's all I have for today. I feel like I talked really fast, but counting collections is so important, okay? From K to 8, our students need it. And so if you have any more questions or would like to talk about counting collections a little bit more, maybe you need me to come show you how to do it in your classroom, just let me know and come see me. Okay, thank you.